Imagine sitting in a quiet Tokyo alley late at night. Neon lights shimmer on wet pavement. You step into a tiny ramen shop, the kind that seats only 6 people. A man in his 70s stands behind the counter, carefully stirring a pot of broth that's been simmering for hours. He doesn't rush. Every movement is slow, deliberate, almost sacred. You take your first bite, and the flavor stops time. Now, picture a bustling street in Guangzhou, China. Steam fills the air. Vendors call out, ladling noodles into bowls, as the aroma of soy, garlic, and beef broth wraps around you. The sound of laughter, clinking bowls, and the sizzle of hot oil fills your senses. You slurp a spoonful of Chinese ramen, and it's bold, powerful, unapologetic. 2 bowls, 2 nations, 2 entirely different souls. And yet, both claim the same title, the King of Noodles Ramen. So today, we're diving deep into one of Asia's most flavorful rivalries, Japan Ramen versus China Ramen. Which is better? Who truly deserves the crown? By the end of this story, you'll see that this isn't just about food, it's about culture, history, patience, and pride. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Story in a Bowl. Ramen is more than just a meal. It's a story in a bowl. A story that connects generations, traditions, and entire civilizations. What began as a humble noodle soup in China has evolved into one of Japan's most iconic dishes. But how did this simple comfort food spark such a fascinating rivalry between 2 of the world's oldest culinary powers? When most people think of ramen today, they imagine the Japanese version: creamy tonkotsu broth, soft boiled eggs, slices of pork, and perfectly springy noodles. But the truth is, ramen's roots dig deep into Chinese soil. Before Japan made it an art form, China gave it life. The difference between them is like poetry versus calligraphy, both beautiful, both precise, yet speaking entirely different languages. In China, noodles represent longevity and strength. Each strand is a symbol of life's continuity. The longer the noodle, the longer your life. In Japan, ramen represents craftsmanship and emotion, the quiet discipline of creating something perfect from the simplest ingredients. This video isn't about choosing sides, it's about understanding how 2 great civilizations turned one humble dish into a cultural treasure. And as we journey through steaming kitchens, ancient traditions, and heartwarming stories, we'll find out who truly deserves the title of the King of Ramen, Japan or China. Chapter 2. The Origins of Ramen. How China created it, and Japan perfected it. If you trace ramen back to its roots, you'll find yourself in ancient China, more than 1,000 years ago. Back then, noodle soup wasn't a fancy meal, it was everyday comfort food. Farmers, travelers, and soldiers all ate it because it was warm, filling, and easy to make with basic ingredients: wheat flour, water, and a pinch of salt. The Chinese called it lamian, which literally means pulled noodles. The name comes from the unique way the dough is stretched and twisted by hand until it forms long, elastic strands. It takes skill, a lot of it, to pull perfect noodles without breaking them. In fact, even today, you'll find noodle masters in China performing this art in open kitchens, turning dough into dozens of even strands with graceful, dance-like movements. Each pull tells a story of patience, of tradition, of respect for craft. These noodles weren't just food, they were a symbol of Chinese life and culture, representing strength and endurance through hard times. And soon, this love for noodles began to travel. In the late 19th century, as trade between China and Japan increased, Chinese immigrants brought their noodles to Japanese ports, especially Yokohama. At first, it was known simply as Shina soba, or Chinese noodles. Japanese workers, dockhands, and students quickly fell in love with this simple soup. It was cheap, filling, and unlike anything they'd tasted before. But here's where the story changes. Japan didn't just copy the dish, they reinvented it. The Japanese are known for their incredible ability to refine, simplify, and elevate whatever they touch. They took the Chinese noodle soup and gave it a soul, transforming it from a quick meal into a culinary art form. Instead of plain broth, they began simmering pork, miso paste, or soy sauce for hours, even days, to create deep, layered flavors. Instead of simple pulled noodles, they developed recipes for different textures and thicknesses, some chewy, some silky. And they added toppings that reflected Japanese taste: bamboo shoots, boiled eggs, nori seaweed, green onions, and slices of pork belly called chashu. By the early 20th century, ramen had become a national favorite in Japan. Then, after World War II, when food was scarce and people needed something warm and affordable, ramen became a symbol of hope and recovery. Street vendors served it in steaming bowls to soldiers, students, and families, a simple meal that lifted weary hearts. From there, it spread everywhere, from Tokyo alleyways to Osaka's bustling districts, each region crafting its own version. Miso ramen from Hokkaido, tonkotsu from Kyushu, and shoyu from Tokyo. So while China may have invented the noodles, Japan invented the experience. It was no longer just food, it was emotion in a bowl. Chapter 3. The philosophy behind the bowl. China's strength versus Japan's soul. When you sit down with a bowl of Chinese noodles, you're not just eating, you're tasting thousands of years of survival and strength. China's approach to food has always been practical, hearty, and generous. Every meal tells a story of people who worked the land, endured hardship, and celebrated together around simple dishes. Chinese ramen, or ramen, reflects this energy. It's powerful, full of flavor, and unafraid to be bold. Chinese noodles are about movement and life. The way the dough is pulled and stretched is almost like breathing. Inhale, exhale, pull and fold. Each strand carries the rhythm of centuries-old traditions passed from master to apprentice. There's beauty in that strength. The Chinese bowl is big, loud, and full of life, just like China itself. The flavors are assertive. Beef broth with ginger, star anise, soy sauce, and a kick of chili. Every mouthful wakes up your senses. In China, food is meant to be shared. It's placed in the center of the table, surrounded by laughter and conversation. Eating noodles isn't a quiet experience, it's social, it's communal, it's alive. That's the Chinese way. But in Japan, ramen means something entirely different. There, food is a quiet dialogue between the chef and the soul. Japanese ramen isn't made to shout, it whispers. It speaks through balance, harmony, and emotion. Each bowl is prepared with almost spiritual precision. The chef thinks about how the flavors blend, how the broth feels on the tongue, how the aroma fills the air. Every detail matters. In Japan, cooking is an act of devotion to the craft, to the ingredients, and to the person who will eat it. A good ramen master doesn't just feed you, he shares a piece of his heart. That's why Japanese ramen feels so emotional. Even though it came from China, Japan turned it into a reflection of their national soul. Where China's ramen celebrates abundance, Japan's ramen celebrates perfection. Where China's bowl says, eat and be strong, Japan's bowl says, slow down and savor this moment. It's the difference between a symphony and a haiku, both beautiful, but moving in entirely different ways. And that's what makes this rivalry so fascinating. It's not just about who does it better, it's about what each bowl stands for. One tells the story of human resilience, the other of human discipline. Both are right, both are beautiful. But which one truly captures the heart of the world? That's what we'll uncover next. Chapter 4. Taste, Texture, and Technique. How Japan and China build their perfect bowl. The first thing you notice about ramen, whether from China or Japan, isn't the taste. It's the aroma, that gentle wave of steam that rises from the bowl, carrying with it the promise of comfort. In China, that aroma is bold and confident. The broth is often beef-based, infused with herbs and spices that awaken the senses: star anise, cinnamon, ginger, cloves, garlic. Every sip feels alive. Chinese ramen broth doesn't try to be smooth or gentle. It wants you to notice its strength. You can feel the warmth travel down your chest like an old friend wrapping you in a hug. The noodles themselves are the main star. Pulled by hand, they have an elasticity that's unlike anything else. You can see them stretch and bounce before they land in the pot. One bite, and you feel that chew firm, lively, satisfying. In many Chinese noodle houses, it's the texture that defines the quality, not the toppings. Chinese ramen celebrates energy, the joy of slurping something hearty and real. It's the kind of meal that keeps you going on a long day, reminding you of home, family, and tradition. Meanwhile, Japanese ramen speaks in softer tones, but don't mistake that gentleness for weakness. The Japanese approach every step with a precision that borders on poetry. The broth is where the magic lives. Some chefs spend 12 to 24 hours perfecting it, simmering pork bones until they melt into a creamy white tonkotsu base, or crafting a light soy or miso broth that balances saltiness, sweetness, and umami in perfect harmony. Each component of a Japanese ramen bowl has a role. The noodles are chosen carefully, some thin and firm, others thick and curly matched to the type of broth. The toppings are thoughtful. Slices of tender pork, marinated eggs with golden centers, sheets of nori seaweed, a sprinkle of scallions, and sometimes corn or butter in northern styles. It's not about filling your stomach, it's about creating balance. Every spoonful is designed to make you pause and appreciate what's in front of you. Chinese ramen says, eat more, live strong. Japanese ramen says, taste deeply, live fully. One fills your hunger, the other feeds your spirit. And yet, both share one sacred rule, and that is the art of the slurp. In both cultures, slurping isn't rude, it's respect. It means you're enjoying the meal, feeling the warmth, and honoring the chef's work. Different countries, different methods, but the same human joy. When you close your eyes and take that first mouthful, it doesn't matter where you are, Beijing or Tokyo, because ramen, in all its forms, speaks a universal language, and that language is comfort. Chapter 5. The Global Influence. How ramen took over the world. Now, let's take a journey beyond Asia to see how a humble bowl of noodles became a global sensation. Once upon a time, ramen was just a local meal, something you found in Chinese markets or Japanese alleyways. But today, you can find it almost anywhere in the world. From a cozy shop in Paris to a street stand in Lagos, from New York's Chinatown to London's Soho, ramen has gone global. The journey began in the mid-20th century. After World War II, Japan was rebuilding, and food was scarce. In 1958, a man named Momofuku Ando changed history by inventing instant ramen, a quick, affordable meal that could feed millions. It was genius. Noodles that could be stored, boiled, and eaten within minutes. For struggling families and students, it was a lifeline. For travelers and workers, it was comfort in a cup. But what no one expected was how this simple invention would introduce the world to Japan's flavor. Instant ramen became an ambassador, the first taste of Japanese cooking for millions who had never been to Japan. Then, something beautiful happened. As Japan's ramen grew in popularity, the world became curious about where it came from and discovered its Chinese roots. People began exploring both sides of the story, the fiery Chinese broths and the soulful Japanese bowls. By the 1980s and 1990s, ramen shops began popping up in Western cities. Some were traditional, while others experimented, adding new toppings like cheese, chicken, and even truffle oil. Still, no matter how creative people got, the spirit of ramen remained the same: warmth, simplicity, and satisfaction. Chinese ramen also began to travel in the form of Lanzhou beef noodles, hand-pulled specialties, and regional varieties like dandan mian or jjajangmian. Chinese immigrants carried these recipes wherever they went to Southeast Asia, Europe, and America. And wherever these noodles went, they adapted, blending local ingredients, spices, and tastes. That's the beauty of ramen. It doesn't stay stuck in one culture. It adapts, absorbs, and evolves, much like the people who eat it. In every country, ramen tells a slightly different story. In the United States, it's a memory of college nights and cheap meals that turned into comfort food. In France, it's a trendy delicacy in sleek urban restaurants. In Africa, it's part of street life, a fast, satisfying bite on busy days. In Japan and China, it remains something sacred, a reminder of where it all began. What's fascinating is that this humble noodle dish has become a global symbol of unity. No matter where you come from, you probably have a ramen memory, that one night when a hot bowl made the world feel a little softer. In the end, it's not just Asia's story anymore. Ramen belongs to the world now, to anyone who finds comfort in that familiar swirl of noodles and steam. Chapter 6. The Verdict. Who wears the crown? Japan or China? After all this talk about flavor, tradition, and history, we finally reach the question everyone's been waiting for. Which is better, Japanese ramen or Chinese ramen? Who truly deserves to be called the king of noodles? The truth is, it depends on what your heart values most. If you crave boldness, energy, and the feeling of life bursting from every bite, China wears the crown. Chinese ramen, or ramen, is primal and passionate. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. Every bowl feels like it came straight from a family kitchen, made with strength and love. It's the taste of movement, of people who built civilizations and celebrated their endurance through food. Chinese ramen is the father of the noodle world, strong, wise, and full of heritage. It laid the foundation. It gave the world the very idea of stretching dough into life. Without China, there would be no ramen, no noodle art, no slurping joy in Tokyo or anywhere else. But if you seek harmony, elegance, and emotion in every sip, Japan holds the crown. Japanese ramen is not just food, it's storytelling. Each bowl reflects years of refinement, patience, and devotion to craft. Where China gave ramen its strength, Japan gave it its soul. The Japanese approach ramen like music. The broth is the melody. The noodles are the rhythm. The toppings, the harmony. Every bowl is composed with care, aiming not to impress, but to move you. When you taste it, you don't just eat, you feel. So, who is the king? Maybe the real answer is this. China is the origin. Japan is the evolution. One created the roots, the other bloomed the flower. One gave ramen its life, the other gave it its art. If you look at ramen through history's eyes, China wins for giving birth to it. If you look through the lens of the heart, Japan wins for perfecting it into an experience the world fell in love with. And perhaps that's the beauty of it. There doesn't need to be one king, because both bowls rule different kingdoms. In the hands of a Chinese noodle master, ramen represents heritage and resilience. In the hands of a Japanese chef, it becomes peace and perfection. And when the two meet somewhere between the spice of Lanzhou and the softness of Tokyo, something magical happens. You taste not rivalry, but respect. So the next time you sit before a bowl of noodles, whether Chinese or Japanese, don't think about who's better. Just take a moment. Inhale the steam. Think about the generations of hands that shaped those noodles, the hearts that poured into that broth. And remember, every bowl tells the story of a people who found warmth in simplicity. That's the real crown, not in the name, not in the flavor, but in the feeling it leaves behind. At the end of the day, ramen isn't just food, it's a journey. A journey that began in the bustling markets of ancient China and found a new voice in the quiet alleys of Japan. A story of two nations, two philosophies, and one shared love, the humble noodle. From China's hand-pulled ramen, rich with spices and history, to Japan's delicate tonkotsu broth, simmered in silence, each bowl carries more than flavor, it carries identity. It tells you who these people are, how they live, and what they value. In China, ramen mirrors community and endurance, bold flavors for hardworking people, gathered around one table, sharing laughter and stories. In Japan, ramen mirrors discipline and beauty, the perfection of form, the calm of balance, and the joy of creating harmony from simple things. And perhaps that's why ramen has conquered the world. Because somewhere between those two worlds, the bold and the serene, we find something deeply human. It reminds us that no matter where we're from, we all seek the same things: warmth, comfort, and a small piece of happiness at the end of a long day. So, who is the king of ramen? Maybe it doesn't matter, because whether it's a steaming bowl in Shanghai or a late-night meal in Tokyo, ramen rules our hearts, not our maps. What matters most is that every bowl connects us across countries, across generations, across cultures. It's the taste that brings strangers together, the meal that warms the soul, the comfort that needs no translation. So the next time you lift your chopsticks and take that first slurp, remember, you're not just eating noodles. You're tasting a story that has traveled thousands of miles and hundreds of years to reach your table. You're part of a tradition that began with human hands, human hunger, and human love. If you enjoyed this journey through flavor and history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves food as much as you do. But before you go, here's a question for you, and we'd love to hear your answer in the comments. When it comes to ramen, which wins your heart, the bold and powerful Chinese ramen or the soulful and refined Japanese ramen? And tell us why. Is it the broth? The noodles? The feeling it gives you? Let's turn the comments section into the biggest ramen table in the world, where everyone brings their own taste, story, and love for the bowl. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.